r/AmItheAsshole. I got my abusive caregiver fired by faking dementia. The bruise on my wrist was turning a lovely shade of purple when Patricia slammed my pill cup down so hard that water sloshed onto my nightstand. "There's your precious medication, you demanding old bat," she hissed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe next time you'll think twice before pressing that call button at 2 a.m. I stared at the soggy mess of pills floating in the spilled water, my heart hammering against my ribs. After 43 years of teaching high school English, I thought I'd encountered every type of bully. I was wrong. "Patricia, I only pressed it because you forgot to bring my blood pressure medication with dinner," I said quietly, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. "Dr. Martinez said it was important to take it on schedule." Her laugh was sharp enough to cut glass. "Oh, did he now? Well, Dr. Martinez isn't here at night, is he?" "I am. And I decide when you get your pills, how you get your pills, and whether you deserve them at all." She leaned closer, and I caught a whiff of stale coffee and something meaner underneath. "Listen carefully, Mrs. Chen, because I'm only going to say this once. You think you're special because you used to be some hotshot teacher. You think you can boss me around because you've got a fancy degree hanging on your wall." I didn't respond. Experience had taught me that engaging with bullies only escalated things. "You're nothing now," she continued, her voice dropping to barely audible. "Just another wrinkled old woman who can't even wipe herself properly. And if you keep causing problems for me, if you keep making my job harder with your special requests and your call button pressing, I will make your life a living hell. Do you understand me?" The threat hung in the air between us like poison gas. I nodded once, not trusting my voice. "Good." Patricia straightened up, her professional mask sliding back into place as footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. "Now clean up this mess before morning shift gets here. We wouldn't want them to think you're becoming clumsy, would we?" She swept out of my room, leaving me alone with my racing heart and the ruins of my evening medication. I stared at the soggy pills for a long moment, then reached for the tissues on my nightstand with shaking hands. This wasn't the first incident. Over the past 3 months, Patricia had forgotten my medications, handled me roughly during transfers, and made cutting remarks about my appearance, my requests for help, and my very existence. But tonight was different. Tonight she'd crossed a line from casual cruelty into outright intimidation. As I cleaned up the spilled water and tried to salvage what pills I could, my mind began working the way it used to when I'd catch students cheating or deal with parents who thought their little angels could do no wrong. Patricia had made a critical error tonight. She'd assumed I was just another helpless old woman who would cower and accept whatever treatment she dished out. She clearly hadn't done her homework. 43 years in public education had taught me more about human psychology, strategic thinking, and long-term planning than Patricia could imagine. I dealt with bullies before, the teenage variety who thought they were untouchable, and the administrative kind who wielded their authority like a weapon. I knew exactly how to handle people like Patricia. The question was, how far was I willing to go? The next morning, I sat in a sunny common area pretending to read my book while I observed the staff dynamics during shift change. Patricia emerged from the elevator looking perfectly professional in her scrubs, chatting pleasantly with Maria, one of the day nurses I actually liked. "Mrs. Chen had a little spill with her evening meds," Patricia was saying, her voice dripping with false concern. "I think she might be getting a bit confused. You know how they get at her age." My grip tightened on my book. "They, as if I weren't sitting 20 feet away." "Really?" Maria glanced over at me with worry creasing her brow. She seemed sharp as ever yesterday when we were discussing the news. "Oh, you know how it comes and goes," Patricia said with a dismissive wave. "One minute they're fine, the next they're knocking over water glasses and making a fuss about nothing. I've seen it 100 times. The casual way she rewrote last night's events, turning her abuse into my incompetence, was breathtaking in its audacity. But it also gave me an idea so perfect, so deliciously fitting, that I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. If Patricia wanted to plant seeds about my mental decline, I could certainly help them grow. I spent the rest of the day researching. The assisted living facility had a surprisingly good Wi-Fi connection, and my tablet gave me access to medical journals, caregiver forums, and detailed information about dementia progression. I'd always been a thorough lesson planner, and this would require the performance of my lifetime. The key was subtlety. Dementia didn't appear overnight, and if I suddenly started acting completely incoherent, even the most negligent administrator would notice something was off. No, this had to be a gradual decline, carefully calibrated to Patricia's shifts and documented through her own reports. I made notes in the margins of my romance novel. Anyone glancing over would think I was just jotting down thoughts about the plot. In reality, I was creating a timeline. Week 1, occasional confusion about time and minor memory lapses. Week 2, increased agitation during nighttime hours, difficulty following complex instructions. Week 3, problems with recognition and more pronounced behavioral changes. The beautiful part was that Patricia had already started the narrative herself. By tomorrow night, I'd simply be fulfilling her expectations. Around 4 p.m., I had my first stroke of luck. Mrs. Rodriguez in the room next to mine was having her family meeting with the facility director, and their voices carried through the thin walls. Her daughter was complaining about inconsistent care during night shifts, mentioning several incidents where her mother's requests had been ignored or handled roughly. "I understand your concerns," came the director's diplomatic response. "We take all feedback seriously and will be reviewing our overnight protocols." Reviewing protocols, that meant Patricia was already on someone's radar. I just needed to make sure she stayed there. My second stroke of luck came during dinner. James, the activities coordinator, sat down at my table and mentioned they'd be installing new security cameras in the common areas next week. "Just a safety measure," he explained, probably noticing my expression. "Nothing to worry about. Though between you and me, administration wants better documentation of resident care quality." Perfect. Cameras meant witnesses, even if they were electronic ones. But they also meant I'd need to be extra careful about where and when I performed my little charade. As the sun set and evening shift began filtering in, I felt that familiar pre-performance flutter in my stomach. Tomorrow night, Patricia would get exactly what she'd asked for, a confused, difficult resident who made her job harder. She just wouldn't realize she'd created the monster herself. I spent the next day fine-tuning my performance, but by evening I was starting to have second thoughts. What if I went too far? What if someone actually believed I was developing dementia and I couldn't convince them otherwise? At 78, the line between acting confused and being perceived as genuinely declining was thinner than I'd like to admit. But then Patricia walked into my room at 9 p.m. to deliver my evening medications, and all my doubts evaporated. Well, she said, setting the pill cup down with unnecessary force. How are we feeling tonight, Mrs. Chin? Not too confused, I hope. The way she emphasized the word made it clear she was already building her case. I took a deep breath and began my performance. Oh, I said, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. Where am I? This isn't my classroom. I made my voice sound slightly distant, uncertain. Patricia's eyebrows shot up. She actually looked pleased. You're in your room at Sunset Manor, Mrs. Chin. You've been here for 8 months now. 8 months. I let my voice rise with what I hoped sounded like genuine distress. But I have papers to grade. My students, they're expecting their essays back tomorrow. There are no students, Patricia said, but I caught the gleam in her eye. This was exactly what she'd been hoping for. You're retired, remember? I spent the next few minutes asking confused questions about where I was and why I couldn't find my grade book, while Patricia made increasingly obvious notes on her clipboard. When she left, I heard her practically skip down the hallway. The next morning, I was back to my normal self with the day staff. I discussed the morning news with Maria, played bridge with my usual group, and even helped Mrs. Patterson with her crossword puzzle. But I could see the day staff exchanging glances, whispering among themselves. The whispers became clearer during lunch when I overheard Sandra, one of the day nurses, talking to the social worker. Patricia noted some concerning behavior last night, Sandra was saying. Disorientation, confusion about time and place. But Mrs. Chin seems completely fine today. Should we call her family? My stomach dropped. I hadn't considered that they might contact my niece Lisa in California. Lisa would be on the first plane out here, and she knew me well enough to smell a rat immediately. Let's monitor the situation for a few more days, the social worker replied. Sometimes these episodes can be triggered by changes in medication or sleep patterns. If it continues, we'll definitely reach out to her family. A few more days. I could work with that, but I needed to be more careful about the timing and severity of my episodes. That evening brought a new complication I hadn't anticipated. Dr. Martinez made an unexpected visit during Patricia's shift. I was in the middle of asking her why my husband wasn't visiting anymore. He died 3 years ago, something Patricia knew perfectly well, when he knocked on my door. Mrs. Chin. I wanted to check on you. The nursing staff mentioned you seemed a bit disoriented last night. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was exactly what I'd been afraid of. If Dr. Martinez examined me now, while I was supposed to be confused, he might order tests or medication changes that could spiral completely out of control. I had to think fast. Dr. Martinez. I said, allowing my voice to clear slightly, as if his familiar presence was helping me focus. I'm so glad you're here. I've been feeling strange. Like my thoughts are all jumbled up. Patricia shot me a sharp look, but I avoided her gaze. Can you tell me what day it is, Mrs. Chin? Dr. Martinez asked gently. It's Tuesday. I hazarded, though it was actually Thursday. As he asked more questions, I realized I was walking a tightrope. I needed to seem confused enough to support Patricia's reports, but not so confused that Dr. Martinez would order immediate interventions. What I didn't know was that Patricia had already made her own plans for how this was going to play out. After Dr. Martinez left with promises to monitor the situation closely, I thought I'd managed the crisis reasonably well. I'd convinced him that I was having mild cognitive episodes without seeming severe enough for immediate intervention. Patricia had watched the entire exchange with calculating eyes, making notes I couldn't see. What I didn't expect was the meeting. The next afternoon, I was summoned to the director's office. Not invited, summoned. The formal tone of the request sent ice through my veins as I made my way down the carpeted hallway, my walker clicking against the floor with each step. Director Williams sat behind his mahogany desk with my file spread open before him. Beside him sat Patricia, looking somber and professional in fresh scrubs, and Dr. Martinez with his tablet and concerned expression. Please, have a seat, Mrs. Chin, Director Williams said, gesturing to the chair across from him. We wanted to discuss some concerns about your recent episodes. I lowered myself carefully into the chair, my mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen during day shift. Patricia wasn't even supposed to be here. I called Patricia in early today, Director Williams continued, as if reading my thoughts. Given that these incidents seemed to occur primarily during her shifts, we felt her input would be valuable. Patricia leaned forward slightly, her voice dripping with fake compassion. Mrs. Chen, I know this must be frightening for you. Memory issues can be so distressing. I've been reviewing the incident reports, Dr. Martinez added, tapping his tablet. 3 episodes in 5 days, all occurring between 8 p.m. and midnight. Confusion about location, time disorientation, difficulty recognizing your environment. My throat felt dry. Yes, I've been feeling confused at night sometimes. The thing is, Patricia interjected smoothly, I've been documenting some other concerning behaviors as well. Aggression when redirected, resistance to taking medications, accusations about staff treatment that seem, well, paranoid in nature. The word paranoid hit me like a slap. She was rewriting our entire history, turning my legitimate complaints about her abuse into symptoms of mental decline. Worse, she was doing it in front of witnesses who had the power to strip away what independence I had left. Now, Patricia, Director Williams said diplomatically, let's stick to observable behaviors rather than interpretations. But the damage was already done. I could see it in Dr. Martinez's expression, the shift from concern to clinical assessment. I wasn't just an elderly patient with some confusion anymore. I was a potential behavioral problem. Mrs. Chen, Dr. Martinez said gently, have you been feeling unusually suspicious of the staff? Sometimes when people are experiencing cognitive changes, they can misinterpret normal interactions as threatening. The irony was suffocating. Here was Patricia, sitting 3 feet away from me, having successfully painted herself as the victim of my deteriorating mind. Every instance of her cruelty had been transformed into evidence of my paranoia. I don't think I'm being paranoid, I said carefully. I've always been able to advocate for myself. Patricia made a note on her pad. Even that, my attempt to defend my mental clarity, was being documented as potential evidence of my decline. Of course, Director Williams said. No one is questioning your right to advocate for yourself. We're simply trying to ensure you receive the appropriate level of care. Appropriate level of care, the phrase sent chills down my spine. I'd seen what happened to residents who were moved to the memory care wing. Locked doors, restricted movement, medications that left them docile and vacant-eyed. What are you suggesting? I asked, though I was terrified to hear the answer. Dr. Martinez and Director Williams exchanged glances. Patricia sat back with what might have been satisfaction flickering across her features. We're not making any immediate changes, Dr. Martinez said. But we are implementing some additional monitoring protocols. Patricia will be conducting more frequent wellness checks during her shifts and will be tracking your cognitive status more closely. More time with Patricia. More opportunities for her to document my decline while having even more access to abuse me in private. My brilliant plan was backfiring spectacularly. As I left the office, Patricia walked beside me, her hand hovering near my elbow in a gesture that probably looked supportive to anyone watching. You've really done it now, she whispered, her voice so low only I could hear. They're watching you, Mrs. Chen. Every confused word, every complaint, every time you can't remember something perfectly, it all goes in your file now. She was right. I'd handed her the perfect weapon, and now she was pointing it directly at my head. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing the full scope of my mistake. I thought I was playing chess, but Patricia had been playing an entirely different game, one where she held all the pieces and knew the rules I didn't even understand. The additional monitoring protocols began immediately. Patricia appeared in my doorway every hour starting at 8 p.m., clipboard in hand, asking seemingly innocent questions designed to trap me. How are you feeling tonight, Mrs. Chen? Do you remember what you had for dinner? If I answered correctly, she'd push harder. Are you sure it was meatloaf? Mrs. Patterson said they served chicken tonight. Of course Mrs. Patterson had early-stage dementia and got confused about meals regularly, but Patricia was counting on me not knowing that. If I showed any uncertainty, she'd make a note. Patient confused about recent events, I imagined her writing. Memory inconsistencies noted. By the third night of this intensified surveillance, I was genuinely becoming confused, not from dementia, but from the psychological torture of having every word scrutinized and weaponized against me. I second-guessed myself constantly. Did I have meatloaf for dinner? Was it Tuesday or Wednesday? The gaslighting was so relentless that I started keeping detailed notes hidden in my Bible, the one place I was certain Patricia wouldn't look. The worst part was watching how she treated other residents when she thought no one was paying attention. Mr. Kowalski in 304 had started wetting himself more frequently, and I caught Patricia roughly changing his sheets while muttering about disgusting old men. She shortchanged Mrs. Liu's pain medication, claiming the woman was drug-seeking when she asked for her prescribed arthritis relief. I wanted to speak up, but who would believe me now? The woman whose own mental state was under official scrutiny. Everything came to a head on Friday night. I was pretending to read when Patricia burst into my room without knocking, a violation of facility protocol that she'd never have risked before my cognitive decline began. Time for your evening meds, she announced, but something was different. Instead of my usual pills, the cup contained medication I didn't recognize. These don't look right, I said, examining the unfamiliar blue tablets. Dr. Martinez adjusted your prescriptions, Patricia replied smoothly. New sleep aids to help with your confusion episodes. My blood turned to ice. I knew Dr. Martinez hadn't changed anything, I'd seen my regular medications earlier with the day nurse. But if I refused to take these mystery pills, Patricia would document it as medication noncompliance due to paranoid delusions. If I took them, I had no idea what they might do to me. I'd like to speak with Dr. Martinez about this change, I said carefully. Patricia's smile was sharp as a razor. He's not available at night, Mrs. Chen. You know that. These are prescribed medications, and facility policy requires you to take them. She moved closer, and I caught the gleam in her eyes that I'd learned to fear. Unless you're going to be difficult again. Because we both know how that gets documented in your file. The threat was crystal clear. Take the unknown medication, or she'd write me up as combative and non-compliant, more evidence for her case that I was becoming unmanageable. I stared at those blue pills and realized I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making. Every move I'd planned had been anticipated and countered. Patricia wasn't just covering her tracks anymore, she was actively accelerating my downfall. What are these pills really for? I whispered. Her smile widened. Why don't you take them and find out? The pill cup sat between us like a loaded gun, and I knew that whatever choice I made would change everything. I stared at those blue pills, my mind racing through possibilities, none of them good. Patricia stood over me, clipboard ready, waiting for me to either comply or give her more ammunition for my file. I need water, I said finally, buying myself time to think. Of course. She turned to fill a fresh cup from my bathroom sink, and in that moment, I made a desperate decision. When she returned, I took the pills from her hand and brought them to my mouth, but instead of swallowing, I tucked them under my tongue. The bitter taste made me want to gag, but I forced myself to take a sip of water and nod. Good girl, Patricia said, making a note. These should help you sleep better. No more of those confused episodes disturbing the other residents. The moment she left, I spat the dissolving pills into my tissue and wrapped them carefully. My mouth burned from whatever chemical residue remained, but at least I hadn't ingested the full dose of whatever she tried to give me. I hid the evidence in my Bible and tried to act normally, but within an hour, I understood why Patricia had seemed so confident. Even the small amount I'd accidentally absorbed was affecting me. My thoughts felt fuzzy around the edges, and my coordination was off when I tried to walk to the bathroom. When Patricia returned for her next wellness check, she found me genuinely disoriented. Oh my, she said with false sympathy. You seem more confused tonight than usual, Mrs. Chen. Are you feeling all right? I tried to focus, but the room kept tilting slightly. I feel strange. Let me call Dr. Martinez, she said, but her tone suggested this was exactly what she'd expected. This level of disorientation might require immediate intervention. My heart raced despite the chemical fog. If Dr. Martinez examined me now, while I was actually impaired by whatever she'd given me, he might order emergency psychiatric evaluation. I could wake up locked in a memory care unit with no way to prove what Patricia had done. No, I managed, fighting through the haze. I just need to rest. Please. But Patricia was already reaching for her phone. I'm calling this in. For your own safety. I watched helplessly as she dialed, knowing that every slurred word I spoke would be more evidence against me. The medication was making it impossible to think clearly, but some instinct told me I had to do something before Dr. Martinez arrived. Wait, I said, grabbing her wrist as she finished the call. The pills, what were they really? Patricia looked down at my hand on her arm, then back at my face. For a moment, her mask slipped completely, and I saw the cold calculation underneath. Proof, she said simply. That you're exactly as confused and paranoid as I've been reporting. You drugged me. The words came out thick and clumsy, but I needed to say them while I still could. I gave you prescribed medication, she corrected. If you're having an unusual reaction, well. That happens sometimes with elderly patients. Their systems can be so unpredictable. The beautiful cruelty of it hit me even through my chemical haze. She hadn't just trapped me, she'd created a situation where my accusations would sound exactly like the paranoid delusions of a deteriorating mind. Dr. Martinez will be here in 20 minutes, she added, straightening her scrubs. Try to get some rest before then. Though I suspect after tonight's episode, we'll be discussing some changes to your care plan. After she left, I forced myself to focus despite the fog in my brain. 20 minutes. I had 20 minutes to figure out how to prove what she'd done before Dr. Martinez arrived to find me in exactly the condition Patricia had described in her reports. My salvation came from an unexpected source. As I struggled to clear my thoughts, I heard familiar voices in the hallway, Maria and James from day shift, covering for someone who'd called in sick. Maria poked her head into my room. Mrs. Chen. Patricia said you were having a difficult evening, but we wanted to check on you ourselves. Looking at Maria's kind face, I made a split-second decision that would either save me or damn me completely. Maria, I whispered, I need you to check something for me. In my Bible. Please. Maria hesitated in the doorway, glancing back at James. Mrs. Chen, you look very pale. Are you feeling all right? I could hear the medication slurring my words, but I pushed through the fog. Please. My Bible. There's something, wrapped in tissue. She exchanged another look with James before stepping into my room. I watched through bleary eyes as she carefully opened my Bible and found the dissolved pills I'd hidden there. What is this? She asked, unwrapping the soggy mess. Patricia gave me, those aren't my regular pills, I managed. Made me take them. I tried not to swallow. James moved closer, studying the blue residue. These don't look like anything on Mrs. Chen's medication list. I helped organize her pill box this morning. Maria's expression shifted from concern to alarm. Mrs. Chen, are you saying Patricia gave you medication that wasn't prescribed? I nodded, fighting against the chemical haze that was making everything feel distant and unreal. She said. Dr. Martinez changed, but he didn't. I know he didn't. We need to document this, James said quietly. And we need to call. Call what? Patricia's voice cut through the room like a blade. She stood in the doorway, her professional mask perfectly in place. Is there a problem? The three of us froze. Maria still held the tissue with the pill residue, while I struggled to sit up straighter in bed. I could see Patricia's eyes take in the scene, calculating, adjusting her strategy in real time. We were just checking on Mrs. Chen, Maria said carefully. She seems very disoriented tonight. Yes, I mentioned that when I called Dr. Martinez, Patricia replied smoothly. Her confusion has been escalating. I had to give her emergency anxiety medication to prevent her from becoming combative. Emergency anxiety medication, even through the fog, I marveled at how quickly she created a plausible cover story. What medication? James asked. I don't see any emergency protocols in her file. Patricia's smile never wavered. Dr. Martinez authorized it over the phone when I described her agitation. Standard procedure for preventing behavioral escalation. She moved into the room, her eyes fixed on the tissue in Maria's hand. What's that you have there? Mrs. Chen says these aren't her regular medications, Maria replied, not backing down. She seems to think. She's confused, Patricia interrupted gently. That's exactly what I've been documenting. Poor thing doesn't remember taking her regular evening pills, so when I had to administer the anti-anxiety medication, she became convinced I was poisoning her. The way she said it, with such practiced compassion, made her sound completely reasonable. Here was a dedicated nurse dealing patiently with a paranoid elderly woman who was clearly declining mentally. But look at the residue, James insisted. These are definitely blue pills, and Mrs. Chen's regular medications are all white or pink. Patricia moved closer, and I saw her subtly position herself between Maria and the door. The anti-anxiety medication is blue. Lorazepam. I can show you the documentation. My heart sank. Lorazepam would explain my disorientation perfectly, and if she'd somehow managed to get phone authorization from Dr. Martinez, or claimed she had, then my accusations would look exactly like drug-induced paranoia. I want to see that documentation, Maria said firmly. And I want to speak with Dr. Martinez directly. Of course, Patricia agreed. Though he's probably still driving here. He should arrive any minute now. That's when I realized Patricia's real strategy. Dr. Martinez would arrive to find me disoriented and making wild accusations about being drugged, but there would be official documentation showing that yes, I had been given medication, with proper authorization, due to my escalating behavioral issues. My paranoid reaction to receiving appropriate treatment would be the final nail in my coffin. Maria, I whispered, fighting to form the words clearly. Check the medication log. She couldn't have documented it properly. Not this fast. Patricia's smile flickered for just a moment. Mrs. Chen, you're becoming agitated again. Maybe we should. The log, James said suddenly. She's right. Any emergency medication has to be logged immediately in the system. Patricia, show us the entry. I saw something dangerous flash in Patricia's eyes as she realized her perfect plan had a flaw she hadn't accounted for. The electronic medication system timestamped every entry, and she'd been too confident in her ability to gaslight everyone to create the proper documentation in advance. Well, she said, her voice still steady but with an edge creeping in, I was focused on patient care first. The logging can wait until... No, Maria said firmly. It can't wait. That's a serious protocol violation. The room fell silent except for my labored breathing and the distant sound of elevator doors opening down the hall. Dr. Martinez had arrived, but now I wasn't sure if that was salvation or disaster. Everything would depend on what Patricia said in the next 60 seconds. The elevator doors chimed, and I heard Dr. Martinez's familiar footsteps approaching down the hallway. Patricia's mask was starting to crack around the edges, but she recovered quickly, smoothing her expression back into professional concern. Dr. Martinez is here, she announced, as if this solved everything. He can explain the emergency medication protocol we discussed. But Maria wasn't backing down. She'd moved closer to my bedside, still clutching the tissue with the blue residue. Mrs. Chen, before the doctor gets here, I need you to tell me exactly what happened tonight. I already explained, Patricia began. I wasn't asking you, Maria cut her off, her voice sharp. James positioned himself near the door, and I realized they were both beginning to understand that something was seriously wrong. My head was still foggy from whatever Patricia had given me, but I forced myself to focus. This might be my only chance to tell the truth before Patricia spun her web of lies around Dr. Martinez. She brought pills I'd never seen before, I said, working hard to keep my words clear. Said they were new sleep medication from Dr. Martinez. But when I asked to speak with him about the change, she said he wasn't available and I had to take them anyway. That's not unusual for nighttime adjustments, Patricia started. She threatened me, I continued, my voice getting stronger as the medication began to wear off slightly. Said if I was difficult, it would go in my file. When I tried not to swallow them, she stood there watching to make sure I did. Patricia laughed softly. Dr. Martinez, you're just in time. He appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, looking concerned. Mrs. Chen is having another episode. She's convinced that her prescribed medication is somehow suspicious. Dr. Martinez stepped into the room, his eyes taking in the scene, Maria holding the tissue, James blocking the doorway, Patricia standing with her clipboard, and me sitting up in bed looking disheveled and frightened. What's going on here? He asked. Patricia claims you authorized emergency anxiety medication for Mrs. Chen tonight, Maria said before Patricia could speak. But she hasn't logged it in the system yet, and Mrs. Chen says these blue pills aren't anything she recognizes. Dr. Martinez frowned. I didn't authorize any emergency medication tonight. Patricia called me about Mrs. Chen's disorientation, and I said I was coming in to evaluate her, but I didn't order any medication changes over the phone. The silence that followed was deafening. Patricia's face went through several emotions, surprise, calculation, then a return to professional concern. There must be some confusion, she said smoothly. Perhaps I misunderstood your instructions. I was trying to manage what seemed like an escalating behavioral situation. By giving her unauthorized medication? James asked. I may have given her an extra dose of her regular sleep aid, Patricia backtracked. Mrs. Chen has been so confused lately, she probably didn't recognize it in the different lighting. But Dr. Martinez was already checking his tablet. Mrs. Chen's sleep medication is white, and she only gets one dose at bedtime. These blue residues don't match anything on her current prescription list. Patricia's professional mask was slipping faster now. Well, perhaps she's confused about what I actually gave her. You know how unreliable her memory has become. My memory is fine, I said, and for the first time in weeks, my voice carried the authority I'd once commanded in my classroom. And I'm not confused about being threatened and forced to take medication that wasn't prescribed to me. Dr. Martinez looked directly at Patricia. I need you to explain exactly what medication you administered tonight and where you obtained it. Patricia glanced toward the door, but James was still standing there. She was trapped, and we all knew it. I think there's been a misunderstanding, she said, but her voice had lost its confident edge. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. No, Dr. Martinez said firmly. If you administered medication to my patient without proper authorization, that's a serious matter that needs to be addressed immediately. I watched Patricia's face as she realized her careful house of cards was finally collapsing. For months, she'd hidden behind the assumption that no one would believe a confused elderly woman over a trusted staff member. But now she had witnesses, and her lies were unraveling in real time. The question was, what would she do when cornered? Patricia's eyes darted between Dr. Martinez and the door, and I could practically see her mind racing for an exit strategy. When cornered, bullies either crumbled or escalated, and something in her posture told me she was choosing escalation. You know what? She said, her voice taking on a wounded tone. I've been trying to protect all of you from the truth about Mrs. Chen's condition. But if we're going to air everything out in the open. She turned to Dr. Martinez with an expression of reluctant professionalism. Mrs. Chen has been making increasingly serious accusations against staff members. Not just me, she's claimed that day shift nurses are stealing from her, that maintenance staff are going through her belongings, that the kitchen staff are deliberately tampering with her food. My stomach dropped. She was creating an entire fictional history of paranoid delusions, and doing it with such conviction that I almost believed it myself. She's been hiding these episodes from you, Patricia continued, addressing Dr. Martinez. Acting completely normal during your visits while becoming increasingly agitated and suspicious during overnight hours. Tonight, when I brought her regular medications, she became convinced I was trying to poison her and started making wild threats about getting me fired. Maria's grip tightened on the tissue, but I could see doubt creeping into her expression. Patricia was good, very good, at this. I was so concerned about her escalating paranoia that yes, I did give her a mild sedative from the emergency supply. I know I should have called you first, but she was becoming combative, and I was worried she might hurt herself or other residents. Dr. Martinez looked between Patricia and me, his expression troubled. Mrs. Chen, have you been having concerns about other staff members? The question felt like stepping into quicksand. If I denied it, Patricia could claim I was covering up my episodes. If I admitted to being suspicious, which any reasonable person would be after experiencing abuse, it would support her narrative that I was paranoid. I've had some concerns about Patricia specifically, I said carefully. Not about other staff members. You see, Patricia said with sad triumph. It's focused delusion. She's fixated on me because I work the night shift when her confusion is worst. In her mind, I become the source of all her problems. James stepped forward. But what about the medication logging? Even if Mrs. Chen was becoming combative, you still should have documented. You're absolutely right, Patricia said, pulling out her phone. I was so focused on patient safety that I forgot proper procedure. Let me correct that right now. She started tapping on her phone, and I realized with horror that she was actually logging the sedative retroactively, creating the paper trail that would make her story official. There, she said, showing her screen to Dr. Martinez. Emergency administration of lorazepam, 0.5 milligrams, for acute agitation and paranoid behavior. I've noted that proper authorization should have been obtained first, and I take full responsibility for the protocol violation. It was masterful. She'd admitted to a minor procedural error while establishing an official record that supported her version of events. Now if I continued to insist she drugged me, it would look exactly like the drug-induced paranoia she was describing. Dr. Martinez studied the phone screen, then looked at me with obvious concern. Mrs. Chen, lorazepam can sometimes cause confusion and anxiety in elderly patients, especially if you're not used to it. That might explain why you're feeling suspicious about the medication. But she threatened me, I insisted, even as I felt my credibility slipping away. She's been abusing me for months, rough handling, withholding medication, verbal intimidation. Doctor, Patricia said gently, this is exactly what I've been trying to document. The accusations have been escalating along with her nighttime confusion. I've been hoping her family could be involved in developing a care plan that addresses these behavioral changes. My family. My niece Lisa, who would fly out here and see me making wild accusations against a nurse who appeared completely professional and reasonable. Lisa, who would probably conclude that my mind was finally going and I needed to be moved to a more restrictive environment. I think we need to have a comprehensive evaluation, Dr. Martinez said slowly. Mrs. Chen, I'm going to schedule you for some cognitive assessments, and we'll also review all the incident reports from the past few weeks. The incident reports Patricia wrote, I said desperately. Of course they support her story, she's the one who wrote them. The look of pity that crossed Dr. Martinez's face told me everything I needed to know. To him, I looked exactly like what Patricia had painted me as, a frightened elderly woman whose mind was creating enemies where none existed. Patricia had won. Again. As Dr. Martinez and Patricia continued their hushed conversation in the corner of my room, I felt the walls closing in around me. The lorazepam was still affecting my thinking, making it hard to form coherent arguments, and every word I'd spoken in my defense had only made me sound more paranoid and confused. But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Patterson from down the hall appeared in my doorway, clutching her walker and looking agitated. Excuse me, she said in her wavering voice. Is everything all right? I heard shouting. Everything's fine, Mrs. Patterson, Patricia said quickly, moving toward the door. Mrs. Chen just had a little episode, but we've got it handled. You should get back to your room. But Mrs. Patterson didn't move. Instead, she looked directly at Patricia with an expression I'd never seen from her before, sharp, focused, and deeply angry. You, she said, pointing a trembling finger at Patricia. You're the one who told me my son never calls. You said my family had forgotten about me. Patricia's professional smile tightened. Mrs. Patterson, you're confused. We've never discussed your family. I may have dementia, Mrs. Patterson said, her voice growing stronger, but I'm not stupid. And I remember you. You told Mr. Kowalski that his wife was glad he was put away, so she could spend his money. You told Mrs. Lou that her grandson thinks she's a burden. A chill ran down my spine. Mrs. Patterson's dementia came and went in waves, but in this moment, she was completely lucid, and furious. Dr. Martinez stepped forward. Mrs. Patterson, what exactly are you saying? I'm saying she's cruel, Mrs. Patterson declared. She whispers poison in our ears when no one else is around. Makes us feel worthless and abandoned. I thought it was just my sick mind making things up, but watching her with Mrs. Chen, it's the same pattern. Patricia's face had gone pale. Mrs. Patterson clearly doesn't understand what she's saying. Her condition makes her prone to false memories and... My condition makes me forget what I had for breakfast, Mrs. Patterson snapped. It doesn't make me imagine conversations that never happened. You told me last Tuesday that my daughter only visits out of obligation. You said she complains about the cost of keeping me here. Maria had been listening with growing alarm. Mrs. Patterson, did Patricia say these things when other staff members were present? Of course not. She's too smart for that. Always waits until we're alone, when we're tired or scared or confused. Then she plants her little seeds of doubt. James pulled out his own tablet. I'm looking at Mrs. Patterson's family contact log. Her daughter visits twice a week and calls every other day. Her son calls from Oregon every Sunday. That's what I told her. Mrs. Patterson said triumphantly. But she kept insisting they were just going through the motions, that they'd be relieved if something happened to me. I watched Patricia's expression shift from confident control to barely contained panic. Mrs. Patterson's unexpected testimony was destroying the narrative she'd worked so hard to build. This is exactly what I've been talking about, Patricia said, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. These elderly patients feed off each other's paranoid thoughts. They create shared delusions. Enough, Dr. Martinez said sharply. Patricia, I think you should step out while we continue this discussion. I don't think that's appropriate, Patricia protested. As Mrs. Chen's primary night nurse, I should be involved in any decisions about her care. Actually, came a new voice from the hallway, I think we need to discuss your involvement more carefully. Director Williams appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Behind him stood a woman I didn't recognize, wearing a badge that identified her as building security. Patricia, Director Williams said, we need to talk. The security officer stepped into my room, and I watched Patricia's confident facade finally crack completely. Her eyes darted between Director Williams and the exit, but there was nowhere to go with all of us watching. "There's been a development," Director Williams announced, his voice carrying the weight of authority I hadn't heard from him before. "We've been reviewing our security footage from the past week." My heart hammered against my ribs. Security footage. I'd completely forgotten about the cameras James had mentioned, the ones being installed in common areas. But my room wouldn't be covered, so what could they have possibly seen? Patricia straightened her scrubs with shaking hands. "I'm not sure what you think you found, but..." "Medication room access logs," the security officer interrupted, consulting her tablet. "Cross-referenced with your shift schedules and patient medication records. Very interesting patterns." The medication room. My mind raced as I realized Patricia's mistake. She'd had to get those blue pills somewhere, and if she'd accessed controlled substances without proper authorization, there would be electronic records. "I can explain any discrepancies," Patricia said, but sweat was beading on her forehead. "Sometimes we need to adjust dosages based on patient behavior, and the logging system can be delayed." "Delayed by 3 hours?" Director Williams asked. "Because according to our records, you accessed lorazepam from the controlled substance cabinet at 9:47 p.m., but didn't log any patient administration until 12:15 a.m., coincidentally, right after Dr. Martinez arrived." Mrs. Patterson gripped her walker tighter, watching Patricia with the intensity of someone who'd finally found validation for her experiences. "She's been doing this to all of us, hasn't she? Taking things, changing things, making us doubt ourselves." "Mrs. Patterson, please return to your room," Patricia said, her professional mask slipping back into place. "You're becoming agitated, Anne." "Don't you dare," Mrs. Patterson snapped. "Don't you dare try to dismiss me again. I may be old and sick, but I know cruelty when I see it." Dr. Martinez was studying his tablet with growing alarm. "Patricia, I'm looking at medication discrepancies going back months. Residents reporting missed doses, complaints about rough handling, multiple incidents of behavioral issues that only seem to occur during your shifts." "Correlation isn't causation," Patricia replied, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Behavioral episodes are more common at night when patients are tired and disoriented. That's basic geriatric medicine." The security officer stepped closer. "What about inventory discrepancies? Small amounts of anti-anxiety medications, sleep aids, even mild antipsychotics disappearing from the locked cabinet." My blood ran cold. If Patricia had been drugging other residents too, making them compliant or confused to cover her abuse, the scope of her cruelty was far worse than I'd imagined. "I want my union representative," Patricia said suddenly. "I'm not answering any more questions without proper representation." "That's your right," Director Williams acknowledged. "But you're suspended from patient care duties effective immediately, pending a full investigation." For a moment, I thought Patricia would accept defeat gracefully. Then her eyes fixed on me with such pure hatred that I instinctively shrank back against my pillows. "This is all because of her," she hissed, pointing at me. "You want to know the truth? Mrs. Chen has been faking memory problems for weeks, trying to manipulate the system to get me fired. She's been playing all of you, pretending to be confused while documenting everything like some kind of spy." The room went silent. My carefully constructed defense crumbled as Patricia revealed the one piece of information that could destroy me completely. Even if everything else she'd done was proven, my own deception would undermine any sympathy or credibility I'd built. Dr. Martinez looked at me with new eyes. "Mrs. Chen, is that true? Have you been pretending to have cognitive issues?" The accusation hung in the air like a death sentence. Every eye in the room was on me, and I could feel the weight of their judgment shifting. Patricia's final gambit was brilliant in its simplicity, destroy my credibility by revealing my deception, making everything I'd said suspect. My voice caught in my throat. How could I explain the elaborate performance I'd created without sounding exactly like the manipulative person Patricia was painting me as? "Mrs. Chen," Dr. Martinez said quietly, "this is very important. Have you been pretending to have memory issues?" I looked around the room at faces that had moments ago been filled with concern for my welfare. Now I saw doubt creeping in. If I'd been capable of faking dementia symptoms, what else might I have fabricated? "Yes," I whispered, because lying now would only make things worse. "I did fake some confusion episodes." Patricia's smile was triumphant. "You see, she's been running a con for weeks. Every incident report, every medication complaint, every accusation against me, it's all been part of her scheme." "But why would you do that?" Maria asked, and I could hear the disappointment in her voice. My hands shook as I tried to find words that wouldn't sound like excuses. "Because no one believed me when I told the truth. When I reported Patricia's behavior through proper channels, nothing happened. The abuse continued, and I was labeled as a difficult resident." "So you decided to frame an innocent nurse?" Patricia interjected. "Innocent?" Mrs. Patterson's voice cracked like a whip. "You told me my family was waiting for me to die. Mrs. Patterson, your memory issues." "Stop." Director Williams held up a hand. "Patricia, regardless of Mrs. Chen's performance, we still have the medication discrepancies, the inventory problems, and now Mrs. Patterson's testimony." I saw hope flickering, but Patricia wasn't finished destroying me. "Mrs. Patterson's testimony from a woman with documented dementia," she said smoothly. "And medication discrepancies that Mrs. Chen could have caused herself. Think about it, she's admitted to elaborate deception. What if she's been tampering with her own medications to create evidence against me?" The suggestion was so outrageous, so perfectly twisted, that for a moment I couldn't breathe. She was painting me as the mastermind of an elaborate frame-up, using my own confession against me. "That's ridiculous," James protested, but I could see uncertainty in his expression. "Is it?" Patricia pressed her advantage. "She's a retired teacher, intelligent, organized, capable of long-term planning. She's already admitted to faking medical symptoms to manipulate staff. Why wouldn't she fake medication tampering too?" Dr. Martinez was studying me with clinical detachment now, and I realized I was losing him. The revelation of my deception had poisoned everything else I'd said. "Mrs. Chen," he said carefully, "if you've been pretending to have memory problems, how can we trust anything else you've told us? Because some of it was real. I said desperately. I only faked the confusion during Patricia's shifts. The abuse, the threats, the rough handling, that all actually happened. According to you, Patricia said. But you've already proven you're willing to lie to get what you want. The security officer was taking notes, but her expression suggested she was beginning to see me as the problem rather than the victim. My carefully planned revenge had backfired spectacularly, and now I looked like exactly what Patricia claimed, a manipulative resident trying to destroy an innocent nurse. I have an idea, Mrs. Patterson said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension. If Patricia is so innocent, let her take a lie detector test. Patricia's confident expression flickered for just a moment before returning. That's completely unnecessary. Unless you have something to hide, Mrs. Patterson continued, her eyes sharp with lucidity. After all, Mrs. Chen isn't the only one whose story needs verification. The room fell silent again, but this time the tension was pointed directly at Patricia. The silence stretched until Patricia finally spoke, her voice tight with controlled anger. I don't need to prove my innocence with parlor tricks, she said. Lie detector tests aren't even admissible in court because they're unreliable. But they might put some minds at ease, Director Williams said thoughtfully. Given the serious nature of these allegations. I watched Patricia's face carefully, looking for tells I'd learned to recognize from years of dealing with dishonest students. The slight tightening around her eyes, the way her hands clenched and unclenched at her sides. What I think we need, the security officer interjected, is a more thorough review of the security footage. Not just the medication room, all common areas where staff-resident interactions occur. Patricia's head snapped toward her. I thought you said the cameras were only in common areas, not patient rooms. That's correct, the officer replied. But hallways, nursing stations, the dining room, all covered. If there's been inappropriate behavior, we might have visual evidence. How far back do the recordings go? Dr. Martinez asked. 6 weeks for the older cameras, 2 weeks for the newer installations. 6 weeks. My heart sank. That would cover the period when I'd been faking confusion, but it would also show Patricia's behavior during my genuine distress in the weeks before that. The question was whether anyone would be able to tell the difference. I want those recordings reviewed immediately, Director Williams declared. All interactions between Patricia and the residents making complaints. This is harassment, Patricia protested. You're treating me like a criminal based on the word of patients with documented mental health issues. Mrs. Patterson doesn't have mental health issues, Maria pointed out. She has dementia, which affects memory but not personality changes this dramatic. Patricia whirled on Maria. Oh, so now you're a neurologist. You've been working here for what, 8 months? I've been caring for elderly patients for 15 years. The shift in Patricia's tone was stark, from professional concern to naked aggression. Even Director Williams stepped back slightly. Patricia, he said carefully, I think you should go home for the evening while we sort this out. I'm not leaving until my shift ends, she snapped. I have patients who depend on me, and I won't abandon them because some confused old women have been telling stories. Some confused old women, the mask was fully off now, revealing the contempt she'd been hiding behind professional courtesy. Mrs. Patterson gripped her walker tighter. There it is. That's the real Patricia. That's how she talks when she thinks no one important is listening. Mrs. Patterson, you need to return to your room immediately, Patricia commanded, her voice carrying an edge of authority that made my skin crawl. You're becoming disruptive. I'm not going anywhere, Mrs. Patterson declared. For the first time in months, people are actually listening to us instead of dismissing us as crazy old ladies. The security officer was typing rapidly on her tablet. Director Williams, I'm seeing some interesting patterns in the access logs. Patricia's been entering patient rooms during off hours, times when she wouldn't normally need to be providing direct care. I do wellness checks, Patricia said, but sweat was beading on her forehead again. It's called being thorough. At 3 a.m. Multiple rooms, multiple nights, with no incident reports filed. Dr. Martinez pulled up something on his own tablet. I'm looking at sleep disturbance reports from the past month. Unusual number of residents complaining about nighttime anxiety, disrupted sleep patterns, feeling on edge during overnight hours. Night shift is naturally more challenging, Patricia insisted. Patients are disoriented, more likely to have episodes. Or more vulnerable to abuse, Mrs. Patterson said quietly. When it's dark and quiet, and there's no one around to witness what really happens. Patricia's professional facade was cracking faster now. You're all making a huge mistake. Mrs. Chen has manipulated this entire situation, and you're falling for it. But I could see the doubt spreading through the room like ripples in water. Patricia's aggressive defensiveness was undermining her own credibility, making her look exactly like someone with something to hide. The medication logs will tell the real story, the security officer said. We'll know within the hour whether there's been systematic tampering with controlled substances. Patricia's eyes darted toward the door again, and for a moment I thought she might actually run. Instead, she straightened her scrubs and lifted her chin defiantly. Fine, she said. Check your logs. Review your precious footage. But when you don't find anything concrete, I want a formal apology and compensation for the damage you've done to my reputation. The confidence in her voice made my stomach drop. What if she really had been careful enough to avoid the cameras? What if the medication discrepancies could be explained away? What if, in the end, it still came down to her word against mine, and I'd already destroyed my own credibility? The security officer's radio crackled to life, interrupting the tense standoff in my room. Jenkins here, came the tinny voice. You need to see this footage from Tuesday night. Bringing it up to Mrs. Chen's room now. My heart hammered against my ribs as heavy footsteps approached down the hallway. Patricia's confident expression flickered for just a moment before she composed herself again. Whatever you think you found, she said smoothly, context is everything. These elderly patients can misinterpret the most innocent interactions. Officer Jenkins appeared in my doorway carrying a tablet, his expression grim. Ma'am, this is from the hallway camera outside Mrs. Liu's room. Tuesday, 2:47 a.m. He turned the screen toward Director Williams, and even from my bed I could see the black and white footage. Patricia's figure was clearly visible entering Mrs. Liu's room, staying for several minutes, then emerging with something in her hand. What's significant about this? Director Williams asked. Mrs. Liu reported missing pain medication Wednesday morning, Jenkins replied. Said someone came into her room during the night and told her she was drug-seeking and didn't deserve her full dose. Patricia scoffed. Mrs. Liu has been known to hoard medications. I was probably retrieving pills she'd hidden to take later. It's a common safety issue. But Jenkins wasn't finished. He swiped to another video. This is from the same night, 15 minutes later. Medication room access. The timestamp showed Patricia entering the secure medication area with what looked like a small bottle. She stayed inside for less than a minute. She could have been returning confiscated medication to proper storage, Director Williams said, but his voice lacked conviction. That's exactly what I was doing, Patricia jumped in. Following safety protocols for patients who attempt to hoard controlled substances. Mrs. Patterson made a disgusted noise. Safety protocols. You told Mrs. Liu her family was tired of her complaints about pain. You said they thought she was becoming addicted. I never said any such thing, Patricia replied, but I caught the slight tremor in her voice. Jenkins swiped to a third video. This one's from Thursday night. Mrs. Kowalski's room. My stomach clenched as I watched Patricia's figure on screen, gesturing animatedly while standing over a bed. Even without audio, her body language looked aggressive, intimidating. Mr. Kowalski was agitated, Patricia explained. I was trying to calm him down using standard de-escalation techniques. By leaning over him like that? Maria asked, studying the screen. That's not de-escalation. That's intimidation. Friday morning, Jenkins continued, pulling up another file. Mr. Kowalski requested a different night nurse. Said he was afraid to sleep because someone was saying mean things about his deceased wife. Patricia's face was flushing red now. These patients have vivid dreams, night terrors. They confuse dream content with reality. But Dr. Martinez was connecting dots I hadn't even considered. Patricia, I'm seeing a pattern here. Every resident who's made complaints has also had medication irregularities during your shifts. Sleep aids going missing, pain medications being redistributed, anti-anxiety drugs disappearing from inventory. That's circumstantial. And then there's this, Jenkins interrupted, pulling up one final video. The timestamp made my blood freeze, last night, 10:15 p.m. My own hallway. The footage showed Patricia entering my room carrying what was clearly a pill cup. She stayed inside for exactly 7 minutes, much longer than a normal medication delivery required. When she emerged, she was walking differently, more purposefully, like someone who just accomplished something important. Mrs. Chen reported being given unidentified blue medication during this time frame, Jenkins said quietly. Medication that made her disoriented and confused. Director Williams turned to Patricia with dawning understanding. You weren't just abusing residents. You were drugging them to keep them compliant. Patricia's professional mask finally shattered completely. You have no idea what it's like working with these people night after night, she snarled. Constant demands, complaints, treating us like servants. Someone has to maintain order. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Mrs. Patterson actually smiled with grim satisfaction. There it is, she said quietly. The real Patricia. The one who's been tormenting us for months while everyone thought we were just confused old ladies making things up. Patricia realized what she just revealed, her face going pale. I didn't mean, that came out wrong. But it was too late. Her moment of honest rage had destroyed any remaining credibility she might have claimed. Director Williams was already reaching for his phone. Security, I need backup in Mrs. Chen's room immediately. And call the police. The police arrived within 20 minutes, and I watched with deep satisfaction as Patricia was led away in handcuffs, still protesting her innocence even as the evidence mounted against her. But my vindication came with an unexpected twist that left me feeling both triumphant and humbled. Mrs. Chen, Director Williams said after Patricia had been removed, I owe you an enormous apology. Your unconventional methods were ethically questionable, but they exposed a serious pattern of abuse that we failed to detect through normal channels. Dr. Martinez nodded gravely. The investigation will take weeks to complete, but preliminary evidence suggests Patricia was systematically medicating residents without authorization, stealing pain medications, and engaging in psychological abuse. Your willingness to document her behavior may have saved other residents from months of additional suffering. Mrs. Patterson gripped my hand with surprising strength. You were brilliant, she whispered. I knew something was wrong, but my memory. I thought I was going crazy. You gave us our voices back. Over the next few days, the full scope of Patricia's abuse emerged. 7 residents had been affected, ranging from medication theft to verbal intimidation to unauthorized sedation. The security footage revealed a pattern of behavior that had gone undetected because Patricia was careful to target the most vulnerable residents, those whose complaints could be easily dismissed as confusion or age-related paranoia. The district attorney filed multiple felony charges including elder abuse, medication tampering, and theft. Patricia's nursing license was immediately suspended pending criminal proceedings. More importantly for me, the facility implemented comprehensive policy changes, mandatory body cameras for night shift staff, real-time medication logging, and regular wellness checks conducted by supervisory personnel. But perhaps the most satisfying outcome was watching my fellow residents regain their confidence. Mr. Kowalski stopped having nighttime episodes. Mrs. Liu's pain was properly managed again. Mrs. Patterson became an unofficial advocate for resident rights, her occasional moments of clarity making her a formidable defender of anyone she perceived as being mistreated. You know, Dr. Martinez said during one of our follow-up appointments, what you did was risky. Faking dementia symptoms could have led to unnecessary medication or restrictions on your freedom. I nodded, understanding the weight of what I'd almost lost. I spent my entire career teaching students that there are right ways and wrong ways to solve problems. But sometimes, when the system fails, you have to get creative. Just promise me, he continued with a smile, that if you have concerns in the future, you'll come to me directly first. I promise, I said, meaning it. Though I hope I never need to use those particular acting skills again. The facility awarded me a formal commendation for courage in protecting fellow residents, which now hangs next to my teaching awards. But the real reward was simpler, the return of peaceful nights, respectful care, and the knowledge that Patricia could never again use her position to torment vulnerable people. 6 months later, I received a letter from Patricia's attorney requesting that I provide a character reference for her sentencing hearing. I wrote back with 2 words, absolutely not. Mrs. Patterson, reading over my shoulder, cackled with delight. You know what the best part is, she said. She thought we were just helpless old women. She never imagined we had 43 years of teaching experience and the strategic mind of someone who dealt with bullies before. I smiled, adjusting my reading glasses as I returned to my book. Never underestimate a retired teacher, Patricia. That was your first and last mistake. Outside my window, the sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace.